So inventory levels right now are stacking up. Supply has far exceeded demand. And when you combine that with the astronomical price tags and MSRP price hikes and the interest rates being what they are right now, and the fact that banks are denying 1 out of 5 auto loans, well, that doesn't bode well for the car market at large. We truly are a sinking ship. A lot of these dealerships are just hoping for a government bailout. You know, the writing is on the wall. Prices have gotten out of hand, interest rates are still garbage. People are just not buying this inventory as it continues to skyrocket. They're laying off production and assembly line workers, the writing is on the wall, and we are aiming toward that impending crash. This truck not that long ago, at least an equivalent truck, was between 50 and 60 grand. But now, look at that price tag, $85,000. No thanks, GM. You remember just about a year ago, not even, many dealerships were trying to get $20,000 or $30,000 over MSRP for these Hummer EVs. Kind of comical, because you go to any dealership now and you see a huge lineup of these sitting unsold. And of course, they're pushing incentivized interest rates. It doesn't get much better than that, right? And pretty big discounts just to move them. The number of loans right now within the US that are over 30 days past due is the highest that we have seen since the 08-09 recession. Let that sink in. Hey YouTube, Untamed here. So the car market crash of 2025 is well underway. In today's video, I'm going to provide some stats, facts, and figures that prove that, while answering the question of what does a modern day crash look like in the automotive industry. I'll also conclude with what indicators you should be looking for at your local dealerships as they head toward bankruptcy. So stick with me. You can't go to your local Ford dealership without seeing a huge lineup of unsold Ford Broncos here. Between big body examples, the Bronco Sports over there, they've been sitting for 180 to 200 days on average across the nation right now. The Bronco Sports actually a little bit worse, with 220 to 225 days being the national average. And honestly, it's not too surprising because many of these are priced between $65,000 and $72,000. The Raptor in particular, that's about 100 grand right now before discount. Even though they come at a much more bearable price tag of around 35 grand, it's still pretty difficult to get excited about the Bronco Sport here, even when they come with this type of incentivized interest rate, 1.9% APR, and $1,000 bonus cash. Somebody call the whoop-de-doo hotline and tell them to stop the press. Oh snap, I spoke too soon. We have an adventure package Bronco Sport here. Comes with tires, vent visors, a lift, and wheel package. How about that? All for just a small price jump of $4,500 plus, what is that, a KG protection package of $2,000? All right. And still made in Mexico. No thank you. You know, the vehicles that are actually selling are between that $30,000 and $40,000 price point. The national average sale price of a new vehicle right now is $48,405. So when you can go buy a brand new Ford Maverick Lariat here for $38,000 and some change, that's actually starting to sound a little bit more bearable, especially when you look at that monthly payment. I was actually at this dealership just a week ago and they had 6 or 7 Ford Mavericks, and well, I think they're only down to 1 right now. So they are selling. You know, we talk about it plenty. Americans are overextended in a number of directions right now. Between their mortgage, their rent, insurance costs, cost of groceries, cost of everything has just gone through the roof. We can all agree on that. But one thing we don't talk about too much is credit card debt. Credit card debt right now, the national average is just over $7,200. Ironically enough, that actually matches the amount of negative equity that most Americans have right now. The national average of negative equity is also $7,200, meaning people owe $7,200 more than what their vehicle is currently worth. Kind of ironic. Americans are bleeding out right now. We've talked about how MSRPs have gone up 42% since 2019. That in and of itself is a pretty big pill to swallow. But when you combine that with the cost of insurance premiums, that is where the pain really sets in. Insurance premiums have over doubled in the last 2.5 years. In some states, we're looking at a 60% increase year over year. That's pretty insane. I find it extremely alarming that we have so many unsold F-150s on this dealership lot, all various trims, all unsold. Obviously, many of them are coming with pretty big discounts, but even then, we can't move this inventory. It's becoming a problem for Ford because many dealerships across the US right now are losing money month to month. This here is America's best-selling pickup truck, but even they can't sell these. Since when did diesel pickup trucks double in price? I swear that many of these here used to be $50,000 to $60,000. Now, F-350 with the 6.7 liter high output power stroke, $101,000. F-350 here Platinum, $97,000. Another F-350 Platinum, $97,000 and some change. The list goes on, and they're all wildly expensive. It's no surprise that they're all sitting here collecting dust. Over on this side, we have a bunch of unsold Ford Rangers. The price tags of these are right around that $50,000 point. Do you remember when you could spend 50 grand and buy one of these guys over here? Those were the days, huh? So as you see behind me here with the endless line of unsold vehicles, we now have over 3 million brand new vehicles available within the US. That's becoming alarming as 2025 models are beginning to hit the lots, with 2023 and 2024 units still sitting collecting dust across the nation. That figure right there of 3 million units available within the US, that's not the alarming bit. The alarming bit is how quickly we have grown to that point. We have seen over 120% increase since 2023. That's pretty insane. Because inventory levels have gotten out of hand, a lot of dealerships across the US are turning away allocations. They're turning away deliveries of new vehicles. That's problematic because it has a ripple effect, right? If we're no longer receiving vehicles, that means there is no longer a need to produce the vehicles, and they lessen the amount of vehicles being produced each year, which ultimately means layoffs for production and assembly line workers across the nation. And this is not only a US problem, this is a global issue right now. We're seeing it from Mercedes-Benz, BMW, Volkswagen even. They're laying off over 3,000 employees this year, and Volkswagen in particular has vowed to lay off over 35,000 employees overseas between now and 2030. That's quite alarming. You know, we see it with Nissan. Globally, they're laying off over 9,000 employees this upcoming year. And with BMW and Mercedes-Benz in particular, they're both reporting record high profit losses in this last year. And that's only going to get worse as we move into 2025, I assure you. And it may come as no surprise to many of you, but EV sales have come to a screeching halt within the US, with Rivian actually leading the pack with the worst market share loss in 2024. They've seen a 55% drop in their share price in 2024 alone. That is only followed by Lucid, another smaller EV company, but they saw a 48% share market loss. Not too surprising. The future does not look bright for EV sales within the US in particular, right? I mean, even when Ford will incentivize the heck out of their deals with a 0% interest rate over 72 months and give you government tax credits here, they still can't move this inventory. Same goes for the F-150 Lightning over there. They can't move that inventory after slashing the prices through credits and whatnot over $20,000 with incentivized interest rates. They can't move that inventory either. And well, let's face it, with Trump administration coming back into office, the incentives for EVs are actually going to go back down. You know, the redesigned Ford Explorer here does look good, but since when do they cost this much money? Throughout this last year, we saw a 23% increase in repossession rates within the US here. Because of that, it's really no surprise that banks are clamping down. 1 out of 5 auto loans that were applied for throughout this last quarter were actually denied. Banks are just not offering out money and offering out auto loans like they used to because, well, people are failing to make these payments. Out of all the auto loans within the US right now, the average payment that an individual is making on a new vehicle purchase right now is just over $760. It's just over $525 for a used vehicle purchase right now. That's throughout this last year. That's the average. But a lot of people, when they go out and buy these big trucks that cost upwards of $90,000 to $100,000, which is becoming much more commonplace, they're finding themselves in a very sticky position when it comes to that payment. Let me paint a picture for you real quickly. Over a 72-month loan, this $92,000 pickup truck, $92,300 to be exact, combined with a 7% interest rate, which is the national average for a new vehicle purchase right now, combined with that and a 7% sales tax, which is probably pretty typical, right? Sometimes more, sometimes less. And with registration fees involved, you're spending over $120,000 ultimately on this pickup truck if you carry that full loan to term. If you spend 72 months paying for this thing, 120 grand. That's about $20,000 just in interest fees if you carry the whole loan. Pretty insane, huh? You know, as a Toyota enthusiast myself, I had a lot of hope for the new Toyota Land Cruiser here, but the fact that they crammed a 4-cylinder underneath the hood and still have the audacity to charge you about $60,000 for it really upsets me. And let me make it clear that these two examples over here, they are the cheapest trimmed example, being the 1958 edition. It only goes up from there. You know, I actually spoke to a sales rep here at my local Toyota dealership. They are actually moving some of their Toyota Tacomas these last couple of months here. That's because they're slashing the prices and offering incentivized interest rates. That's become pretty commonplace. A $6,000 to $8,000 discount off of a new Toyota Tacoma, that's pretty typical now. Because let's face it, a mid-sized pickup truck built entirely out of Mexico at a price point of just over 53 grand, that's a big no thank you for most folks. But when you bring that down to about 45,000, people begin to see it as a bearable option. It's interesting watching Toyota backpedal a little bit because they don't see much success with their new 4th generation Toyota Tacoma or the new current generation Toyota Tundra over there. They have lessened the displacement size of their motors now with a 3.5 liter twin turbo V6, whereas it used to have a 5.7 liter V8 underneath the hood, a glorious V8 that was super reliable, but now they made it overly complex with that 3.5 liter twin turbo. And this here, don't get me started on that 2.4 liter 4-cylinder turbocharged platform here. But Toyota's been chasing green credits, and they slapped these badges on it, the iForce Max, hybridizing the 4-cylinder underneath the hood. That right there hikes up the price tag quite a bit, and it offers Toyota a lot of government handouts, a lot of government green credits, or carbon credits is what they're referred to as. People didn't want it, they didn't ask for it by any means. It's not much more fuel efficient, but by doing that, they get some handouts from the government. You know things are bad when even Toyota is sitting on their new Toyota Tundras and Toyota Tacomas for months on end. The Toyota Tundra here, it's not uncommon for it to sit at a dealership for over 220 to 250 days. The Toyota Tacoma over there is now becoming pretty common sight to see 150 to 180 days on dealership lots. That is absurd. Normally speaking, they would fly off within a few weeks. Not the case anymore because people are wildly unimpressed with these new trucks. I mean, you can even get these new Tundras in these sweet colors like this dog crap brown for just under $67,000. Come on, that's a bargain for this limited, right? Obviously, I pick on Toyota a little bit, but they are a prime example of quality going down and price tags going up. Outsourcing production to Mexico where they save 80% on labor cost, and they still hiked up the price of the new generation Tacoma there 25% over the previous year, just in 2023, where they had a naturally aspirated V6 that was actually reliable. How about that? So they're just a prime example of it, but we do see that from all vehicle manufacturers right now. The quality just is seemingly going down every single year, but that price tag, well, it keeps climbing. Because MSRPs have gotten out of hand and banks are clamping down, dealerships are in a position where they can no longer deploy their greedy tactics of adding ADMs or addendums or markups over MSRP anymore. They just can't do it. A bank will not finance that loan unless the individual is putting a ton of money down, right? So we are seeing a lot less markups, even on very desirable trims, which is reassuring. We're even seeing discounts on vehicles that were once marked up just a year ago. We're talking Tier D Pro trim, Toyotas here, the Trail Hunter now is even coming with a $4,000 discount that I'm seeing across the board. Higher trimmed grade diesel pickup trucks like you see behind me here, the King Ranch F450s, the F450 Limited, they're all coming with discounts now, and they were about $10,000 over MSRP, pretty commonplace. Same goes for the Ram TRX. I'm seeing those with huge discounts, bringing down the final edition from $125,000 to $108,000, $110,000. Same goes for the Ford F-150 Raptor. We're seeing $4,000 to $7,000 off MSRP now. So that is reassuring anyway. Now the vehicles that are actually selling right now are between that $30,000 and $40,000 price point. Like I showed you with the Ford Mavericks over there, they're moving. This RAV4 behind me, they're between that $30,000 and $40,000 price point as well, and they have great fuel efficiency. So when you combine those together, it just makes sense for people. They're not selling because they're wildly popular, they're selling because people can actually afford those monthly payments. And if you want a full-size SUV, a full-size family hauler, get ready to spend anywhere from $70,000 to $100,000 plus based on the trim. That has become the common price point for full-size SUVs. Like many of the Expeditions behind me, they're well over $80,000. That's absolutely insane. I guess that is one type of birth control, I suppose. So car market crash is good if you're trying to buy a vehicle here in 2025, but if you have a trade-in, that's going to hurt because wholesale market has gone down 18% throughout this last quarter. So if you have a vehicle that was once worth $40,000 on trade just a year ago, get ready to get offered about $31,000, $30,000 for it. I mean, really, it's common sense, right? So if you have an F-150, a used F-150 that you're trying to trade in, but they can't sell their brand new ones over there with a $10,000 off discount, so of course, you can expect the value of your used one to come down even more. Even the Bronco Raptor, like you see behind me here, you were seeing $18,000 to $20,000 off MSRP discounts right now. So that's at least reassuring, but also alarming at the same time, because what does that say? It says that Ford wildly overpriced it right out of the gate. You know, although I like the look of this Chevy Colorado ZR2 Bison, I just cannot get over the price tag, right? I mean, we're looking over $61,000, hopefully you can see it, over $61,000, nearly 62 grand for this Colorado ZR2 Bison. That just feels insane for what you get underneath the hood, although it looks great, but it's still a 4-cylinder underneath the hood. How is that? And I'm not lying when I say many of these used examples over here at this particular dealership were here a few weeks ago. So they're not moving this used inventory. And I can't say I'm surprised, because when you look at the used vehicle interest rates for used vehicle loans, most banks are charging anywhere between 10 and 12%. The national average right now actually dropped just a little bit over the last 30 days. It dropped from 11.2% being the average to 11% being the now current average. So at 11% interest rate on a used vehicle, it doesn't matter if you're saving a few grand off of that price, because you're going to pay for it quickly with those interest rates. And just for context, it makes more sense to spend $50,000 on a new vehicle with a 7% interest rate compared to spending $42,000 for that same used example at an 11% interest rate. So even though you're saving money on that sale price, if you carry that loan through term over 72 months, you're paying more for that same exact vehicle that you could have bought brand new. Hope that makes sense. Obviously, that's not a factor if you're not financing. If you're paying cash, buying used is generally a better option. Michigan's unemployment rate is actually rising the fastest right now, largely due to what we're seeing out of Motor City. Out of Detroit, we're seeing a lot of layoffs happen. A little bit less than originally anticipated, but they're still dialing back and cutting employees. If you have 100 grand laying around the house, you can go pick up one of these new redesigned 2025 GMC Yukon XL Denali's with a price tag just over $96,000. But with current interest rates, you're going to be spending well over 125 grand for this particular example. A lot of dealerships are actually charging a markup on these right now. You can tell that they're just holding on to pandemic days. Those are the dealerships that are going to go bankrupt first. Believe it or not, GM is actually doing the best out of all auto manufacturers within the US right now. They have actually seen the least amount of decrease in their share costs. It's because it's not uncharted territory for them. GM is kind of used to discounting and slashing prices and incentivizing interest rates. It's nothing new to them. So it's not too uncommon to see advertised prices with $6,000 off and a 0% interest rate or a 0% interest rate over 36 months. I would wager if it meant making a deal on it, you can get 10 grand off of this and still have a really good incentivized interest rate. Many dealerships are getting desperate right now, but especially Jeep, Dodge, Ram, Chrysler dealers, because we have over 25,000 brand new Ram pickup trucks available within the US right now. 1500s, 2500s, and 3500s, with the average lot time of being over 460 days. 460 days. We're teetering toward a year and a half average lot time for Ram pickup trucks. For Jeep Wranglers in particular, they're seeing over 280 to 300 days on lots right now. That's why we're seeing pretty big discounts on them. I've seen these Jeep Wrangler Rubicon 4xEs as much as $22,000 off MSRP. Here we have an example of about 16 grand off. Still not enough. You know, it doesn't pay for a dealership to keep a bunch of inventory on their lot. They have the flooring costs that they pay like a compounding interest rate every single month, like a credit card. We talked about that before. Moving this metal, moving this inventory is what will keep them afloat. If a franchise like GMC or GMC's that they're not moving any inventory, they'll be first on the chopping block. Can't help but wonder if a lot of these dealerships are just hoping for a government bailout. You know, the writing is on the wall. Prices have gotten out of hand. Interest rates are still garbage. People are just not buying this inventory as it continues to skyrocket. They're laying off production and assembly line workers. The writing is on the wall, and we are aiming toward that impending crash. But you can just tell by the way they're pricing some of their vehicles, especially the dealerships still trying to deploy greedy tactics like markups. They're just hoping for a government bailout, and I don't think it's going to happen. I actually hope it doesn't. You know, when we talk about the repossession rates increasing 23% this last year, it's largely thanks to vehicles like this. These are the typical culprits of it. These sports cars, these fun weekend vehicles tend to be the first vehicles that are being repossessed. A lot of Ford Mustangs, a lot of Camaros, a lot of Chargers, as you'd imagine. But even these, right, they're a part of that category with a price tag of just over $63,000. The CT5 Sport in this kind of cool color, Typhoon Metallic, well, that's a part of the category too. I think one of the most comical examples of the modern day auto market would be the Hummer EV here. Do you remember just about a year ago, not even, many dealerships were trying to get $20,000 or $30,000 over MSRP for these Hummer EVs? Kind of comical, because you go to any dealership now and you see a huge lineup of these sitting unsold. And of course, they're pushing incentivized interest rates. It doesn't get much better than that, right? And pretty big discounts just to move them. We got a couple over here, but I just went to a dealership the other day where there was literally dozens upon dozens lined up. No thanks. So although cool, this GMC Sierra AT4X is wildly overpriced. This one is sporting the 6.2 liter V8, but this truck not that long ago, at least an equivalent truck, was between 50 and 60 grand. But now look at that price tag, $85,000. No thanks, GM. The number of loans right now within the US that are over 30 days past due is the highest that we have seen since the 08-09 recession. Let that sink in. So Nissan and Stellantis are probably in the worst shape right now. Nissan is on the verge of being bought out by Honda, really as a last-ditch effort to save the brand. Right now, over half the dealerships within the US are losing money month to month. Nissan has announced recently that they'll be cutting over 9,000 employees worldwide. Stellantis, they've seen roughly about a 50% drop in their stock or share market this last year. They're continuously going down and they're really spiraling out of control. Stellantis in particular, they have to cut some of their 14 brands. There's 14 brands underneath the Stellantis umbrella. They have to cut some of them within the next year and a half here, and we can expect to see that. So the big question is, what will a car market crash here in 2025 actually look like for you and I, the consumer? I think a lot of people just are very hopeful, maybe wishful, and thinking that they can go buy a $50,000 pickup for $20,000. You know, they like to think like that, those huge cuts of over 50, 60%. I don't think that's realistic. What I do believe really is realistic before a dealership declares bankruptcy and closes their doors and hands back the inventory to the franchise owner, what I believe will happen is dealerships will go down as low as 10 to 15% below invoice. So for example, let's just pretend with made up figures here, on a $50,000 pickup truck, let's pretend invoice is $44,000. I believe that they'll sell that truck for as low as $40,000 or $38,000. That's just an example with invoice considered. 10 to 15% below invoice. The dealership is technically losing money on their inventory, but they're moving it. They're moving it and hopefully building and developing loyal customers that will come back to the dealership in years to come. So that's my hope for it. Obviously, I love the idea too, just like you guys, of getting a $50,000 pickup truck for 20 grand. It's just very unlikely, extremely unlikely. So a real car market crash is 10 to 15% below invoice before that dealership actually declares bankruptcy. That's my thoughts on it. What do you think? So before a dealership actually closes their doors, if they've already lost too much money, that's when they have to declare bankruptcy and hand back all of their vehicle inventory to the franchise owner. So like I'm at a Chevy dealership right now. If they were to declare bankruptcy, Chevy, GM would then come in, reallocate all their inventory that you see on this lot. They'd take it and put it to other dealerships that are maybe performing a little bit better or more populated areas perhaps. That's what would happen when they declare bankruptcy and they can't afford to stay afloat. But before that, what I truly believe what a car market crash will look like for you and I, the consumer, is 10 to 15% below invoice. So I'm gonna give you made up figures here, but on a $50,000 pickup truck, we'll say one of these Chevy Colorados here, $50,000, let's pretend invoice is $44,000. We're pretending here, okay? I would say that they would sell it as low as $38,000, maybe $40,000, that price point. They're already losing. They're losing money at that point technically, but the hope would be if they cut their losses early, lose some money on their inventory, they would actually develop some long-term loyal customers, returning customers. That would be the hope to sustain the dealership, sustain the business. But what do we see now? We see way too many dealerships that are far too greedy. They tasted blood. They're like sharks with blood in the water. During the pandemic, they're charging markups and taking advantage of you and I, the consumer. They refuse. They absolutely refuse to sell to you at a loss. And well, that's going to serve to their own detriment. And that is going to be the driving reason why they go under and why they fail. And, well, I can't say I feel bad for them. All right, guys, we'll wrap up the video there. As always, I sincerely appreciate you taking the time to tune into these videos. If you haven't already, I respectfully request that you consider liking and subscribing. I enjoy talking about this stuff. It really is my personal passion. I have a PhD in industrial and organizational psychology, or IO Psych. I love this stuff. I understand there's a lot of YouTubers out there who are always crying that the sky is falling. I understand that. But I do firmly believe that the data doesn't lie, and we are on the verge of that car market crash, and it is going to happen here in 2025. But is that car market crash going to be as drastic as we hope? That's going to be the point of contention for a lot of us. So as always, I appreciate you taking the time to tune in. Thanks for watching. Until next time.